The air above the city tasted like metal and ash. Smoke curled from the factory ruins along the river, and the night lights flickered as power grids strained to keep the lights on. People moved through the streets like ghosts, faces hollow with tired fear. On screens in plazas and homes, a looping video showed the moment the Arcadia station had come too close to a military satellite. The explosion was a white bruise against the dark sky. Millions had watched their relatives vanish in a flash. The world had watched and could not look away. In a glass tower that still held its old name, the Global Council met. The council room was wide and cold, with a single long table that caught the blue light from the monitors. Flags from many nations hung on the walls like faded promises. At the end of the table sat President Miguel Alvarez. He had a steady face, lined by too many hard days. Around him sat leaders, generals, scientists, and citizens chosen by lottery to speak for the people. Captain Laura Grant listened from the observer gallery. She had been a naval officer before she moved into space operations. Her hands rested on the railing, knuckles pale. She had watched the Arcadia feed that morning. The station had been a civilian hub, full of research crews and families who depended on it. Laura had worked with some of them. She still heard their voices in her head. She did not want to hold a gun to the sky, but she also did not want to see another Arcadia. Dr. Ethan Cole stood to address the council. He was tall and thin, with tired eyes that looked like he had not slept in days. He led the Exile Commission, a group formed after the first collapse of the old space treaties. He spoke slowly, as if choosing each word with care. "This is no longer a local crisis," he said. "We can no longer rely on old systems. Militarized satellites and private orbital weapons create a danger we cannot control. Trust among nations has broken. We must choose a new path." The council members argued. Some wanted to rebuild Earth defenses. They called for stronger missiles and tighter control of space routes. Generals with uniforms covered in medals spoke in firm voices. They wanted to protect land and power. They said exile was cowardice. They said it would leave the globe open to new threats and chaos. Others looked at the images of children in hospitals and said humanity had failed itself. A woman with a simple voice, Leah Price, spoke for them. She had lost her sister in the Arcadia blast. Her hair was short and her hands shook, but her eyes were bright. "We built those weapons," she said. "We put them where they could kill our own people. If we stay, we will keep building them. If we leave, we can learn to live another way. We can start clean." Her words landed like stones. President Alvarez closed his eyes for a moment. He weighed the arguments on the table. He thought of the cities burning and the refugees on trains. He thought of the farmers who could not feed their families and the children who would grow up in places without safe air. He knew the decision would not be simple. He also knew the world had to move quickly. The military leaders warned that more strikes could come. Scientists said the atmosphere would worsen if industry continued unchecked. People wanted hope. Dr. Cole proposed what he called the Exile Plan. It sounded like science fiction. Build self-sustaining arcs and send groups of people to new worlds or to free space habitats where they could live without Earth's politics. These arcs would be small cities with farms and workshops and schools. They would be led by councils chosen by the people who lived on them and guided by laws that all arcs would accept. The plan included careful steps for leaving. First, secure communities, then deep stores of food and medicine, and a guarantee to keep communication open with those who stayed behind. Exile is not abandonment, Dr. Cole said. It is an escape with rules. We will carry our ethics with us. He set out a simple draft of principles that would guide the arcs. Do no harm to outsiders. Share resources fairly among arcs, and keep a transparent record of all first contacts in space. Laura thought about the rules. As an officer, she had learned the need for clear orders. But as someone who had lost friends to careless actions, she worried that people might hide behind rules and still commit harm. She watched the faces around the table. Some delegates nodded at the idea of clear rules. Others scowled. In the crowd outside, Aaron Price organized. He was not wealthy and had no title, but he had a skill for speaking plainly. He walked the neighborhoods and told people about the referendum the council planned. The vote would decide whether humanity would leave Earth or try to fix what was broken. Aaron set up booths, printed flyers, and talked to anyone who would listen. He tried not to promise what he could not deliver. He told people this. If they voted Exile, they could choose who went, how the arcs were run, and what values would carry forward. The referendum divided families and friends. Some held on to hope that Earth could be healed. Others believed leaving was the only moral path. The day of the vote was loud with crowds and arguments. Lines filled the squares. Old men sat and argued with teenagers. Children made drawings of arcs with gardens on their roofs. Everyone had an opinion. When the votes were counted, the margin was thin. The decision to exile had passed. It did not feel like a clear victory. It felt like an uneasy agreement among people who had nothing better left to try. But the world had chosen a direction. Now plans moved fast. Factories that once made cars and jets were repurposed to build arc hulls and life support systems. Engineers worked day and night, turning factories into shipyards. Gardens were redesigned for hydroponics. Spare parts that had sat in warehouses for years suddenly found a use. Money flowed to the arcs, and volunteers filled seats in training centers where future colonists learned farming, medicine, and conflict resolution. The council met again to draft the rules of exile. People wanted laws that would keep humanity honest in space. They feared that leaving the planet might also let old greed grow unchecked. Dr. Cole worked with legal experts to write the first charter. Captain Laura was invited to advise on security. She pushed for strict limits, no weapons designed to strike other sentient beings, and no secret military forces aboard arcs. There were angry voices. Private contractors who built weapons were furious. They had loyally served governments and expected contracts to replace their lost work. They argued that arcs needed defense systems. Some urged that the rules include hidden escape clauses allowing preemptive action in case of danger. Their words were sharp and hungry. In the end, the council decided to put the rules to the public as part of the referendum package. The people would not only vote to leave, they would vote on the rules that would govern them off-world. The rules were simple, meant to be clear and hard to twist. They promised non-aggression, fair sharing, and public records of any first meetings with other beings. They called for a new kind of governance, councils on each arc that could be recalled by vote, and an inter-arc tribunal for disputes. When the final vote came, the world accepted the exile plan and its rules. The room filled with a quiet that felt like the breath before a long run. People understood that leaving Earth would change everything. They knew there would be hard choices ahead. Yet at the same time, in the quiet, there was something like hope. They were deciding to try to be better. They were choosing to take their rules with them into the dark, and to see if those rules could shape a new way of being. Outside, children looked up at the stars as the first arcs were rolled out from the shipyards. They were small and strange, like buried seeds waiting to grow. Captain Laura stood by the rails of the launch platform, wearing a plain uniform. She felt the weight of the oath she had given. To protect, yes, but also to follow the law and the will of the people. She did not know what awaited them beyond the sky. She only knew one thing clearly. The decision had been made, and humanity would carry its rules with it into exile. The council room smelled of coffee and paper. People sat in rows under bright lights. Outside, the shipyards hummed as arcs were built. Inside, lawyers, scientists, and ordinary citizens argued over words that would guide humanity away from Earth. These words would decide how people acted in space and toward any life they might meet. They called them the rules of exile. Naomi Brooks stood at the front. She was a quiet woman who had spent years studying law. Her hair was pulled back, and she held a thick notebook. She had been asked to shape the rules, so they would be simple and strong. People trusted her for being fair. She spoke in a steady voice. "We need rules everyone can read," Naomi said. "They must be easy to follow. They must protect people and life we do not yet know. And they must stop secret deals that lead to war." Around Naomi sat Captain Laura Grant and Dr. Ethan Cole. Laura wanted clear chains of command in emergencies. Ethan wanted strong science rules for first contact. Aaron Price sat with citizen delegates. He wanted measures so ordinary people could hold leaders to account. The first draft of the rules was plain. It had 5 parts. Each part was short. People could remember them. The first rule was simple. Do not attack other sentient beings. If a being showed clear danger that could hurt people immediately, A ship could act to protect itself, but the rules said that attacks on other beings for advantage, profit, or fear were forbidden. This rule angered some military leaders. They called it naive. What if a species plans to attack later? They asked. Naomi answered with another rule, transparency. The arcs would document every encounter. All data about meetings with unknown life had to be shared openly with every arc. No secret weapons, no hidden research. If an arc found a probe, it would log the event, show the recordings, and wait for a response from other arcs. The rule forced honesty. Rule 3 covered resources. Many moons and asteroids held ice and metals. Private companies wanted to claim them fast. Naomi's rule said no one could take another species' land or resources without consent or a fair process. If resources were unclaimed, arcs had to follow a shared plan. If another life used a place, humans could not drive them away. Some people laughed at the idea. "We will starve if we do not mine," said a contractor. But Aaron argued that shared plans meant trade and stability. Dr. Cole added that stealing could start wars that would destroy everything. The room fell quiet. Rule 4 set out governance. Each arc would have its own council. People on the arc would elect their leaders. Councils would be small and answerable. Any council member could be recalled by a vote if the people lost faith. Each arc would keep public records of decisions. An inter-arc tribunal would handle fights between arcs. The tribunal will be made of jurors chosen from many arcs, not just one powerful group. This rule worried the rich and powerful. They wanted control through money and technology. Naomi pushed back. She said the system must make sure no single arc could force changes on others. The tribunal would have the power to audit and to order reparations if one arc harmed another. The fifth rule was about the living world. It said humans should not change other ecosystems without deep study and clear consent. No terraforming that destroyed native life. No large-scale changes without unanimous agreement from all arcs, and, if possible, consultation with any other beings affected. People argued late into nights about the exact words. Lawyers tried to craft loopholes. Some contractors wanted clauses to allow secret defensive systems. Pirates and paramilitary groups tried to push back. They whispered about the chance to keep weapons hidden on private freighters. When word of that reached public delegates, anger rose. Work crews and citizens formed groups to watch shipyards and to report suspicious cargo. Aaron led some of these groups. They worked in day shifts and night watch. The rules needed enforcement. Naomi proposed an early idea: encode the rules into each arc's management systems. The arcs use AI to run life support and supplies. If rules were encoded in the AI, certain actions would require public votes or triggers that would alert the inter-arc tribunal. For example, building a weapon system beyond defensive needs would require a public vote and automatic notification to other arcs. The idea made some leaders nervous. It meant giving power to public processes over secret deals. Captain Laura raised a practical worry. What if an arc is attacked and cannot reach the tribunal? She asked. Naomi and Ethan agreed a temporary emergency protocol was needed. In real danger, a ship could act to defend itself, but the act must be recorded and later judged by the tribunal. It could not be used as a cover for preemptive strikes. The council also wrote rules for first contact protocol. If a probe or vessel was found, arcs would not approach aggressively. They would send messages and wait. A neutral science team would choose peaceful contact methods. They would document everything. Any exchange would be shared publicly. The rules encourage careful gifts of knowledge and medicine rather than weapons or showy technology. The idea was to show goodwill and to lower the chance of fear-driven attacks. Some people asked, what if other beings already saw humans as a threat? Naomi answered with strong honesty. The rules were not a shield against all danger. They were a choice of how humans would try to act. We may lose some things, she said. We may face danger, but we will not become the aggressors. Our rules are how we keep our soul. After weeks of debate, the rules were placed before the public. The team created simple posters showing each rule in one line. Schools taught children the phrases. Songs were sung at small gatherings. People painted the rules on walls near shipyards. The rules were short enough to be carried in a pocket or remembered after one look. When the public read the rules, many felt relief. Some felt fear. Others felt pride. Aaron walked through neighborhoods, talking to people about what the rules meant. He told them the rules would shape the kind of people they would become out there. He reminded them that exile meant carrying who they were inside, not only leaving a place. Private contractors and militias did not stop their lobbying. They filed legal challenges and tried to buy politicians. The council answered by making the rules part of the same referendum that approved leaving Earth. People would vote to go and to accept the rules together. The choice would be linked. On the day the vote counted those rules in, communities gathered to watch. Naomi sat quietly and watched the count. Laura stood behind her, arms folded. Aaron held a child on his shoulders as the numbers came in. The rules passed with strong support. The world had chosen to leave with a code. After the vote, workers started fitting arcs with the systems that would enforce the rules. Open logs would stream basic event data. Tribunal servers would be linked to ARC networks. Citizens set up watchdog groups to make sure scanners and sensors could not be turned off in secret. The rules did not end all danger or all greed, but they made a clear promise. Humanity would not become bullies in space. They would try to act with care and to face unknowns with honesty. The laws were simple, like a rope thrown between ships in a storm. People hoped it would be enough to pull them all through. The shipyard smelled of oil and hot metal. People moved with purpose under bright lamps. Giant hulls lay like sleeping whales. Men and women climbed scaffolds, tightened bolts, and ran cables. The three main arcs, Aster, Horizon, and Meridian, stood ready. Each arc would try a different way of living. Aster would favor skilled workers and engineers. Horizon would follow a chain of command with clear duties. Meridian would test direct democracy and citizen juries. Captain Laura Grant walked the decks of Horizon. Her boots made a soft sound on metal. She looked at the crew practicing drills. Families loaded supplies into cargo bays. Children watched with wide eyes as plants were packed into hydroponic racks. Laura felt a mix of pride and fear. She had spent years at sea and in orbit. She knew the dangers. She also believed in the rules. She had promised to keep Horizon safe and follow the laws that all arcs had agreed on. Aaron Price rode a supply train toward Meridian's loading docks. He wore a simple jacket and carried a small pack. Aaron had helped organize citizen groups to watch the arcs and to report wrongdoing. On Meridian, he would lead a group that checked public logs and helped settle small disputes. He liked to talk to people and to listen. He believed that ordinary voices would keep power honest. Dr. Ethan Cole oversaw technical work at Aster. He taught teams how to grow bacteria for food and how to repair life support systems. On Aster, scientists and technicians ran much of daily life. Ethan wanted fast innovation. He believed tools and ideas would keep humans alive and strong. He also worried that Aster's tech focus could create a gap between people who had access to machines and people who did not. As the arcs prepared to leave, tension grew. Private contractors who built weapons feared losing profit. They had made deals with some leaders to supply arms, if needed. Rumors spread that one group planned to smuggle armed drones on a cargo flight. The idea of hidden weapons made many people angry. One night, a small band of workers found a sealed crate hidden in a freight hold. The workers pried it open and found compact drones with lethal payloads. They filmed the discovery and sent the footage to Meridian's public log. The log could not be altered without alerting the Interarc Tribunal, so the footage spread fast across networks. People were shocked. Many had trusted that the rules were real. Aster's leaders argued the drones were for defense and for protecting mining convoys. They said the drones would stay locked until the tribunal judged the need. But the public reaction was strong. Aaron and his group organized a peaceful sit-in at the shipyard. They blocked a freight elevator and asked for a public hearing. Captain Laura stood between the groups. She wanted to keep order and to protect workers. She also knew the rules forbade secret weapons. She ordered Horizon Security to hold back and asked for cameras and open communication instead. The tribunal opened a fast inquiry. Specialists streamed the shipyard logs and confirmed the crate had been loaded by a private contractor with contract papers that tried to hide the drone's true purpose. The Interarc Tribunal acted. It ordered the contractor to surrender the drones and to face trial under the new laws. The tribunal also demanded that all arcs install public scanners to prevent hidden cargo. The action showed the rules could work. Instead of fighting, people used law and evidence. The contractor protested loudly, but most crews agreed the tribunal's order was fair. Still, not every dispute ended peacefully. Small groups formed that believed strength was better than law. They called themselves the Remnants. The Remnants said humans must be ready to use force to survive. They tried to block supply lines and to seize arcs for their own rule. On a dark morning, a remnant cell attacked a small freighter carrying medical supplies to Meridian. Horizon sent a warning and a rescue team. They used non-lethal force to halt the attack and to take the attackers into custody. The team recorded the action and handed the prisoners to the tribunal. The tribunal offered trials in public. Some remnants were punished with labor and forced community service on farms. Others were jailed for longer terms. Many capture members told stories of fear and hunger that had pushed them to violence. People in the arcs felt sadness. They had to balance justice with mercy. The rules demanded fairness, even for those who broke them. Life in the arcs grew into daily routines. People worked shifts in hydroponic farms, taught classes, repaired machines, and served on councils. Children learned about the rules and how to speak in public. Each arc tried its own system. Horizon's chain of command made decisions fast, but sometimes felt strict. Meridian's direct votes made people feel powerful, but debates could slow action. Aster's technocracy created fast inventions, but sometimes left poor people behind. Trade among arcs started slowly. Aster traded advanced tools for Meridian's seeds. Horizon traded training programs for Aster's repair tech. The exchanges helped people see the benefits of working together. At the same time, disputes over resource shares appeared. Aster's engineers wanted priority access to advanced fabricators. Meridian citizens argued for equal sharing. The tribunal settled some disputes, but anger remained. Ethan worried about the people left on Earth. Food production and cities on Earth struggled. The arcs had promised to send aid, but shipping to the surface was slow and dangerous. Some arcs sent small teams to coordinate relief. Others focused on making the arc stable. Ethan felt guilt. He had led the Exile plan because he believed it would save people. Now he saw how hard that promise was to keep. Captain Laura watched the training exercise one cold night. Soldiers and medics practiced rescue missions in simulated disasters. A child asked her why they trained so hard that the rules said not to attack. Laura answered gently. "We train to protect, not to hurt," she said. "We must be ready when danger comes, and we must follow the law afterward." On a quiet afternoon, Meridian's public log showed a message from a small research station near a moon. The message was short. A probe had been detected gathering data from a nearby cave. The probe signals were weak and strange. Aster wanted to send a team to take the probe. Meridian wanted to wait and document. Horizon said to prepare, but not to act without tribunal permission. The debate showed how fragile trust still was. People remembered the drones and the remnants. They feared mistakes. The rules required patience and transparency, but emotions pulled at them. The arcs had left Earth to escape violence and greed, yet the old patterns still appeared among humans. As weeks passed, the arcs launched and fell into a slow rhythm. They traded, solved problems, and argued in public. Small victories built trust. The tribunal's fair hearings made people feel protected. The public logs deterred many secret deals. But friction would not vanish. Old fears and new scarcity would test the rules again and again. At night, Laura stood watching the stars from Horizon's observation dome. She thought about the people on Earth and in the arcs. She thought about the drones found in a hidden crate and the remnants who had attacked. She thought about the laws they had made and the promise that had sent them away. The sky looked calm, but she knew the road ahead would be bumpy. Still, Horizon moved forward. People adjusted. They learned to build lives under shared laws. The arcs were small, fragile things in the dark, but they carried a large hope. That humans could live by rules and not fall into old wars. That hope would soon be tested by something even stranger than humans. The space near the ice moon was quiet, like a cold desert. Sensors hummed in Meridian's lab. Screens showed faint blips and slow-moving patterns. The probe had been there for days, taking weak signals from the moon's caves. It left no strong signature, no clear shape. It felt like a listening bird, small and careful. Naomi Brooks read the live feed in Meridian's control room. Her fingers hovered over the console. She had helped write the rules about first contact, and now those rules sat in her head like a heavy book. The rules said to be open and to record everything. They said to wait for tribunals when possible. Naomi called a small team, 2 biologists, an engineer, and a translator specialist who worked with signal patterns. The team sent a comm message to the probe. It used broad patterns of radio and light, simple math, and images of human faces and plants. The message asked for communication and offered peaceful intent. The feed showed the probe responding with slow pulses. It sent back a pattern that matched part of the human image, but shifted. It looked like curiosity. Aster control team watched closely. Ethan Cole wanted to study the probe. He hoped to learn how it worked, to borrow its methods to help human systems. On Aster, people spoke of speed and advantage. They argued privately that learning could save lives. Meridian's leaders said no. The rules were clear: document weight, and do not take what was not offered. Captain Laura Grant met with Horizon's envoy team. She had grown careful with power. Her order was simple: prepare a peaceful mission if asked, but do not act alone. Horizon would offer help at the probe, or any being seemed hurt or threatened. She reviewed the protocol. Send medics and translators, not weapons. The probe changed its orbit and moved closer to the cave mouth. The human teams watched as it paused, and then sent a small object down into the cave. Cameras could not see its shape, but sensors caught a faint energy pattern. Naomi asked the translator to send a clear signal. We mean no harm. The probe replied with a longer series of pulses. The signals were not like human language, but they had structure. The translator mapped the pattern to rising and falling tones, which the team turned into simple images. Then a small craft appeared. It was not like human ships. Smooth, low, and shifting in shape as if it flowed with light. It moved without sound, hovering near the probe. The craft sent a steady stream of data. The teams called them scouts. Meridian recorded everything and posted open logs. The rules required public records for first contact, and the logs pulsed out to every arc. Aster's technicians watched with hungry eyes. Some wanted to approach and take samples. Others wanted to trade small gifts of knowledge. Aster had developed a machine that could convert waste into nutrient paste. They argued it would be a friendly gift. Meridian's council warned, no gift that could harm or change other life. Horizon said to proceed slowly. Then a human-made error happened. Aster's field techs, eager and nervous, activated a recovery drone to grab a sample from the probe's shadow. The drone's magnetic clamp touched the probe and snapped a thin antenna. The probe reacted with a flash and a pulse that set alarms across the labs. The alien scout recoiled and sent a sharp signal. The pulse made systems stutter and left one engineer with a mild shock. Nobody had meant harm, but harm had happened. Across the arcs, messages flooded in. Some people demanded retaliation. Old fears rose like smoke. The remnants used the event to call for open force. They said humans could not be weak. Naomi published an immediate, plain log explaining what had happened. She showed the footage, the drone's action, and the probe's response. The log made the story real, and not a rumor. The alien response slowed. Their signals were hard to read now, more complex, layered, and cautious. Meridian sent a message of apology, simple and clear. We did not mean harm. We will stop actions that could hurt you. Captain Laura ordered Horizon to prepare a nonviolent envoy. She chose people who knew languages and biology, and who could show care without weapons. The envoy left in a small ship painted with bright patterns. They carried medical kits, nutrient paste from Aster, and seeds from Meridian. They crossed empty space toward the scouts. The human message was small, a bowl of nutrient, a symbol of help. The scouts watched. They returned a slow image, a pattern like two shapes touching. It might have been a sign of acceptance, or it might have meant something else. The humans could not be sure. When the envoy reached the scouts, the alien beings moved like smoke and light. They did not speak. The translator picked up faint rhythms and turned them into images. Moving light, shifting stones, small colonies of living threads. The translator's images matched some human maps of biology, but the shapes were different. The aliens then touched the envoys, offering with a long tendril of light. The nutrient bowl changed color and gave off a gentle warmth. A scout took a sample and withdrew. The human envoy left the sample with instructions on how to make more. Back on the arks, people watched online. Many praised the calm action. Some still doubted. Aster's engineers asked for more contact. Ethan pushed to offer a device that could help the scouts repair something. Meridian said any device must be tested for harm. Naomi insisted on slow, public steps. Weeks passed. Small exchanges continued. The scouts brought back images of living fields under the ice. Tiny colonies of light-living organisms that glowed when fed by certain minerals. They showed patterns that looked like maps of social gathering. The mirror, human teams had started to call them that, from a shared pattern the scouts used, showed curiosity and care. The arcs shared more data and mapped the scout movements. Traders and scholars in the arcs celebrated. News feeds ran hopeful stories of a new friendship. Then the accident surfaced in another way. Aster's text discovered that the scouts use a kind of communal memory. When one scout died, pieces of its pattern were shared among others. The broken antenna had not killed the scout, but it had changed how it shared memory. Some of the mirror responded with confusion, not anger. Others withdrew. The deep caves. Humans had to learn that even small actions might change a being that thought differently. A public hearing convened. The Interarch Tribunal listened to evidence and to Naomi's careful notes. The legal question was painful. Did Aster's text break the rules by causing accidental harm? The tribunal could see intent was not malicious. The rules demanded reparations and transparency, and they asked all arcs to be more careful. Humanity chose repair. Aster supplied data and a healing device built from non-invasive tech. Meridian shared seeds and nutrients. Horizon offered training on careful sampling. The Mirror accepted the gifts and sent a pattern message that the humans interpreted as thanks. The exchange did not erase fear, but it built a fragile trust. Captain Laura watched the slow progress and felt both pride and worry. The rules had been tested and held. People had shown they could act with care and make amends. But Laura knew the future held harder tests. For now, the Mirror watched, humans watched, and a thin thread of new friendship began to form across the cold space. Years passed, and the arcs grew into small, busy worlds. Families planted gardens under glass. Schools taught math, medicine, and the rules of exile. Shops traded tools and stories. The three main arcs, Aster, Horizon, Meridian, kept close ties. They shared data, food plans, and repairs. The Interarch Tribunal sat in a neutral station and heard disputes. The rules became a habit as much as law. Captain Laura Grant watched the slow life aboard Horizon. She no longer walked the decks every hour. She taught new officers how to lead with calm and how to listen. She believed that good leaders must hold the law and the people at once. Young officers learned to prefer questions over orders when possible. Laura felt proud when she saw children play near hydroponic walls and argue about pollination like small scientists. Naomi Brooks had become Chief Justice of the tribunal. She lived in a small room filled with books and logs. People came to her with hard questions. Naomi studied each case slowly and asked for public records. She believed justice needed light. Naomi wrote rulings that were short and clear, so arcs and citizens could understand them. Her rulings shaped how people solved fights and how they planned joint projects. Dr. Ethan Cole led shared research programs. He worked with mere scientists to study ecosystems and to test safe methods of repair when contact caused harm. Ethan felt both hope and guilt. He remembered the first probe and the broken antenna. He had pushed for a careful study then, and he kept pushing now to make tools that healed rather than harmed. On Aster, young engineers learned an ethic Ethan had learned the hard way. Speed must be balanced with care. Aaron Price ran a civic institute that taught children the rules and how to hold leaders to account. He traveled between arcs, speaking in small halls and on open feeds. He believed ordinary people were the best defense against secret deals and old greed. Aaron set up community audits where citizens could review tribunal cases and ask questions. The audits made leaders nervous sometimes, but the public saw them as a needed check. Trade and culture mixed. Meridian sent seed strains to Horizon. Aster shared repair routines and microfabricator designs. Artists in each arc exchanged songs and stories. Festivals grew that celebrated the launch day and the signing of the rules. People danced and told tales of Earth and of first voyages. Children learned two histories, the long history of Earth and the new story of Exile. But pressure did not go away. Resources remained scarce. New worlds drew interest. A moon with thin air and rich ice sat near a cluster of trade routes. The Mir had shown that life could be shared around such places, and the idea of a habitable world drew strong attention. Nations and relic networks and private firms wanted to claim the moon for mining and settlement. The arcs argued over who should lead the project and how to protect local life. Aster's leaders pushed for fast development. They argued more research and resources would help everyone. Meridian citizens wanted a slow plan with public votes. Horizon wanted a secure model that could act fast in emergencies. The tribunal set a neutral process, a joint stewardship plan with clear rules, shared authority, and a public audit every month. The plan would include Mir input where possible. Then a crisis came. A molecular storm moved through the cluster. It carried charged particles and dense ice that could destroy fragile habitats. Forecast models showed the storm could wipe out initial settlements if people did not act fast. Sensors showed the storm's path would hit the new moon in weeks. Panic rose in the arcs. Some leaders wanted to push people onto the moon quickly, build a shield, and claim resources before the storm hit. Others feared that rushing would harm local life or break the rules. The remnants, small groups still clinging to old ideas, called for seizure and force. They argued that survival needed power, not votes. Naomi convened an emergency tribunal session. She called representatives from Aster, Horizon, Meridian, and a Mir envoy. The Mir sent a pattern of light-based delegates that the translators rendered into images and rhythms. The tribunal listened to data and to voices. Ethan presented models showing the storm's likely effects. Laura spoke for coordinated action with clear nonviolent safeguards. Aaron asked for public review and for measures to protect non-combatants. The tribunal made a plan that mixed speed with law. It set up shared shelters and a temporary deflector field using combined arrays from the three arcs and nearby stations. Engineers worked round the clock to build the field. The plan required equal access to shelters, a no-seizure pledge for the moon's resources during the emergency, and a public record of all actions. Any breach would result in swift tribunal measures and public loss of privileges. Aster's tech teams joined Meridian biologists and Horizon security crews. They sent drones to raise shields, moved habitats into safe zones, and worked with the Mir to plant temporary beacons that could alter the storm's energy patterns. The Mir taught humans a method of redirecting charged particles using fields shaped like living lattices. Humans adapted the method to their machines, and the combined work began to slow the storm's worst edge. The collaboration was not perfect. Aster's fast moves sometimes overrode slower steps. Meridian's long debates delayed some actions. Tensions flared when supplies had to be prioritized, but the public logs and the tribunal's tests kept teams honest. People risked themselves to move supplies. Children on Horizon packed small comfort kits for refugees. Naomi watched as teams took turns sleeping on the floor of the operation room. In the end, the combined deflector and the Mir beacons reduced the storm's impact enough that the moon's initial habitat survived. There was damage, and lives were lost on a small level, but the worst destruction did not come. The shared effort created a new precedent. Stewardship, not conquest, had won in a test of survival. After the crisis, people held memorials for those lost. They planted living groves in small protected domes and named them for the helpers, both human and Mir. The tribunals reviewed actions and issued praise and rebuke where needed. Aster learned to slow some projects and to share more technology. Meridian learned to make faster decisions in emergencies. Horizon worked to keep its security teams bound by law. The crisis changed how the Ark saw themselves. Exile was no longer just escape. It had become a project to try to be better. The rules had guided them through danger and had helped them build ties with other minds. Children born after the Exile sung songs that mixed Earth languages and Mir patterns. They learned to plant, to repair, and to speak in public about shared care. Captain Laura, Naomi, Ethan and Aaron met once more in a small garden between the arcs. They watched young people plant a grove in a shallow soil bed. A mere envoy floated like a ribbon of light nearby, touching patterns of the soil. The leaders felt tired but glad. The rules had not made this life easy, but they had made it possible. As the grove took root, a child from Meridian placed a small stone at its center. The child looked at the mirror and at the human council and said, "We will keep our promise." The stone was simple, with a shallow mark that read, "Exile is a choice. Rules make us human." The leaders looked at one another. They had chosen exile and had built rules that kept them honest. They had saved lives and made strange friendships. The future would bring more tests. But the arcs moved forward under the same simple truth. They had left Earth not just to survive, but to try to be better among the stars.